Hello again. We've seen how to create models either for classification or for regression. We've seen how we can evaluate them. We've seen how we can do validation, cross-validation and things like that. This time I'm going to be showing you how to classify or how to make predictions for new data. So we build a model, we have training data set, we build a model, and then we have another data set which has new data maybe for the class for which the class is unknown, or the value that we need to predict if its regression is unknown. How do we do that? Well, let's have a look at the simple code that I've prepared, and hopefully things will be clearer. Now notice we're going to have a few new methods now, but all of them will be quite useful. We load the classes the usual way. I have here, I'll call the iris dataset, just load it and set the class index as usual. I'm calling it here train dataset, and notice now there's a method in class instances called num classes. We can use it to get the number of classes, and Weka for nominal class values. What Weka does is it gives each distinct value for the class values it gives it an index. So if, for example, the class value, the categories are maybe 5, then Weka gives them 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4 indices, right? And then, so what I'm doing here is I'm just printing out the class values from the iris dataset. So we get the number of classes, then we loop through them, and then we use a method called class attribute in class instances. It returns an attribute value, class attribute in Java, which in Weka, I'm sorry, which is quite important. And then in class attribute we have a method called value. We pass it the class index, and it gives us the class name as string. So if we go to the actual documentation, then there's a class called attribute, and in it we have a method called value that we can use to get the class value. So right at the bottom here returns a value of a nominal or string attribute. Right, so that way we're printing out all the possibilities for the class values, and then we create our classifier naive Bayes, we pass it the training set, and now I have another data set, something I've just created. I've just copied and pasted the iris data set and then removed most of the instances there, and then played about with the class value, just changed class values here and there for the remaining instances. This is what it looks like. The iris unknown, so very small. Remember, these must be in the same order as the training set. If you completely don't know these, we need to know these, so we need to know the categories of the class. But for the actual instances, if we don't know this, then we can replace them with question marks, right? I just keep them now because I want to print them out and compare the predicted with the actual, as you will see in a few minutes. So create the classifier, load the test or the unknown data set, the one I've shown you a few moments ago, set the class index, and now this is what we're going to do. We're going to use the test data set, this one here, loop through all the instances, and then pass these values, of course without the class value, pass these values to naive Bayes, and we'll ask it to try and predict what the class is, and then we'll compare it with the actual class. Remember, repeat myself, if you don't know this, then these can be just question marks, right? These can be just question marks. Right, so this is how we do it. We call a method called num instances in class instances. The name says it all. It returns the number of instances, and then we loop through instances one by one. Now what we do here is we get the actual class. The way we do it is test dataset dot instance. So the ith instance, now there's a method in class instances called instance. It returns an object of type instance. If we go to the API, we've seen instances, but we've seen this one instances, but this time we have instance, and from instance we can have this is how you can use it. So for example, but there's a method called class value, which we can use. I think we've passed here. Returns an instance's class value in internal format. So using it, we can get the class value, right? We get it in double, because remember, by the way, these methods can be used for regression and for classification. That's why it returns double. But what we can do is we can use that number as the class index to get the class value. Remember, we said classes have indices, you know, if when they're nominal. So it returns double. Remember, this is because we can use it for regression. I'll show you how to use regression in the next video. After we get the double value, we pass it to a method called value. So basically, in class instances, we have another method called class attribute, which returns type attribute, the one we've seen before, class attribute. And in class attribute, we have a method called value, right? The method value, we pass it the class index as integer and returns the class name. So it returns a value of a nominal or string attribute. We pass it the class index. How do we deal with the class index? The number here is double. We just cast it into integer and pass it, and we get the actual class value. So that's how we get the actual class value. Read the comments. I hope that is clear. Remember, always the code will be available online. Just look underneath the video and you will find the link over there. Now, what we do now is we get the current instance object. So test dataset.instance of I, we use the index to get the current instance. So that's the current instance object of type instance, and then we pass it to the naive Bayes classifier using the classify instance method. So class classifier has a method called classify instance. We pass it the unknown, the instance for which the class value is unknown, and it returns the predicted value as double. Why is it double again? It's because we can use it for either classification or regression. Now, how from this double value, how do we get the class value? Well, we just cast into double and use the same way as we used here to get the actual value. But now we get the predicted one, so we'll use the value from the prediction. String, predicted string. Just read the comments. Test dataset.class attribute.value, and then we cast this predicted value into int, and then we just print out the actual, this one here, comma, predicted, right? So I'm just here for two headers here, actual class and naive Bayes predicted, and then it'll print them out as you will see. Let's run. Enough talking, and let me show you the output. If you remember, before making the guesses, we printed out the class values from this for loop here. And now the result of this for loop here, the result of getting the actual class and the predicted class from this for loop is shown here. So actual predicted, the actual is R setosa, predicted R setosa, versicolor setosa. So these are actual and predicted for this data set. I hope this makes sense. I'm going to stop here. In the next video, I'm going to be showing you how to do the exact same thing, but for regression rather than classification. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.